Welcome to part 7. In the last couple videos I've gone over the template object, and now it's time to move on to split out what we've already created into separate includes and to start building the authorization object. So I have login.php open, and I want to split out some of this code into separate includes. I have two includes that I want to use. I have an init file, which is going to create our objects, and it will be included on every page. And I have the database.php, which will create our database object and allow us to access the database. I've kept the database in a separate file because not all pages will need database access, and I think it would be best if we don't create a database connection if we're not going to use it. So the first place I'm going to start is with the database file. So I have database.php open, which is within the includes folder. So let's start with basic database settings. So I'll start with my server, and keep in mind that your own settings may differ slightly depending on your own setup. So those are the basic database settings. Now let's connect to the database. I'm going to be using MySQLi like I have in past tutorials. Like so. And the last thing that I want to do is I want to turn on MySQLi's error reporting, at least while we're in development, just in case it'll help us catch errors. Okay, so this file is finished. If we include this file, it'll give us a connection to the database, which is accessible using the database object. And let's move over and work on the initialization file. What I'm going to use here is I'm going to go back to login.php. I'm going to copy all of this code and paste it in, and let's tweak things a little bit. Let's start by creating our objects. So we're going to need to include our template. And while I'm working on this, I'm just going to get it started working a little bit ahead and include our authorization object that we'll be working on a little bit later. And that is m_auth. So we include the two files. Let's go ahead, create our template, and let's also create an auth object, which I'm going to call auth for authorization. And then last thing we want to do in this file is to start a session. So we can delete all of this stuff. This stuff will go within our controllers or our models, not within this initialization file. Now that we have our database and our initialization file set up, let's move to the views. I'm going to open up v_login.php, and let's adjust this code. Let's go ahead and put in login for the title. Let's change the H1, we can just call it login. And I'm going to move the alerts section, so I'm going to copy and paste it within the content. And I'm going to delete the existing content and build out our form that we're going to be using to log members in. So what I'm going to do is just after we initialize our div with the ID of content, let's go ahead and add a form. And we're going to have a blank action because it's going to redirect to the same page. And within that form, it's just going to be a blank div. And I'm going to copy and paste the alerts inside the form. Okay, and then we need to build out our actual form fields. So each form field will go in its own row. This is for IE compatibility mostly. So I'm going to have label, and I'll have our input where the user is going to input their username. And the name of this input and the for need to match. And the value it's going to hold, we're going to be using this template object to store the post data. So I'm going to do opening and closing PHP. And I'm going to echo out this get data. And I'm going to call this one input underscore user. And I've just prefixed this with input, so I know whenever I'm dealing with this particular data, it's input from a table, from a input in our form. And lastly, in this row, I'm going to have another div. It's going to be a class of error. And now we're going to display any error messages related to this form field, just in case. So similarly, I'm going to do echo this get data. And this time I'm going to pass in error underscore, oopsie, underscore user. Okay, so that's it for this row. I'm simply going to copy the row, paste it in, because it's pretty similar. Let's go ahead and change out a couple values. This is going to be password. And the type is going to be password. And instead of input user, it's going to be input pass. And instead of error user, it's going to be error pass. So with those two rows done, just need one last little bit. Let me give you a little bit more space so you can see what I'm doing. So we have one more div with a row of class. I'm going to add a paragraph tag with a class of required, and like so. This just indicates to the users which form fields are required. With a login form it's pretty obvious, but I include it anyway. And then lastly, an input with the type of submit, name of submit, class of submit, and lastly a value of submit. So we close out our row. Let's go ahead and delete this. And everything looks good. So I'm going to save it, and let's move on to the members view. So what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to copy everything that's in the login file. I'm going to move to members and paste it in. And I just need to make a couple tweaks. This view is going to be pretty minimalistic. Just need to show the user that they've successfully been logged in. So I'm going to copy this alert section, paste it up above, and we don't need a form any longer, so we can delete that completely. And down here, let's add a p tag. We'll have a simple message saying you So it's going to say you have successfully logged into the members area. And then we're going to have one more p tag with a link. And we're going to link out to the logout.php file, which we'll create in a minute. And I guess last changes, the h1 needs to say log out, and the title needs to say log out.